Welcome everyone, my name is Kyle with Win the House You Love. Today with me is Erik Martinez. So Erik just recently purchased a home and has been watching some videos, and he wanted to share a little bit of his story. And so I'm super excited to have you on, Erik, to be able to share what you've been going through and walk us through your timeline and costs and everything like that, so some other first-time buyers can get a better idea of what the experience is like to go through. So how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. I mean, I'm nobody special, but hopefully my story's special enough that people will learn from it and they'll get the house that they love.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that language. So man,
A little plug.
Yeah, walk us through kind of a general overview of what happened through the home buying experience. Maybe the best place to start would be walk us through before you were purchasing a home. Where were you at? What was your mindset? And what led you to actually wanting to purchase?
Okay, let's start back a couple of years. I am originally born and raised in New York City, New York, in the five boroughs, Bronx, go Yankees. I was looking at the time in New York, switch jobs. I wasn't really happy where I was at, and it was a transition point in my life where I figured, let's see where we're gonna go. Let's see where I'm gonna lay roots. And eventually, New York wasn't the place. I started looking around different places. I thought of going maybe to North Carolina because I have a lot of family there. I thought about Florida for a while as well. And eventually my eyes and direction toward the Kansas City of all places, which most people are like, what? But it worked out really nicely for me. The problem with North Carolina, no, it's a great state. I love my family there. I love my friends there, but it was a 50% pay cut for me if I would have gone there.
Yeah.
Florida seems to be like you need 2 or 3 jobs for some reason. I was like, I don't know if I want to have that many
alligators
jobs
there too. So.
And their basketball team's not that good. Not that the Knicks are much better. But anyway, I digress. I came out to Kansas City. I have a friend who lived out here and said, hey, check it out. And honestly, when I first heard Kansas City, I thought cows and corn is all I thought. But when I got here, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of good culture. There's a lot of things to do. It's very family oriented. And my daughter got to experience that while she was out here, which was great. I said, okay, let me move out there. I did. I went from my 3-bedroom apartment in New York City to a 1-bedroom apartment out in Kansas. First, I started living in the Kansas area, and I really liked it. But at the time, the job I had didn't pan out. I got a new job, and I was driving 100 miles a day to and from work. So I was like, well, I got to move a little closer. Yeah. Found another apartment. Looking at a house wasn't in the cards just yet because honestly, I didn't think I could afford it. Moved to the second apartment. Lived there for about 2 years or so, and I saw a post on Facebook from a buddy of mine I work with who was also a realtor, and said, "Oh, I got this townhouse I'm selling. Maybe you want to take a look." And I said, "I don't know if I can afford it." Went and looked at it. I wasn't crazy about it, but that's when I started to learn that hey, I think I can afford this. The rents and the mortgages were starting to come in line, so to speak, and I wanted to make sure that I got in on it and not let that opportunity pass me by because eventually things will go up, rents continually go up, and you don't get anything out of it. It's not an asset for you. It's building an asset for the property manager or the landlord rather than yourself. I mean, getting a home, whether it's a townhouse, whether it's a condo, anything like that, that's an asset. You're building your net worth moving forward, and that's something you want to do as an individual going.
Yeah. So you mentioned like buying a house probably wasn't in the cards because you didn't think you could afford it. What changed going from I don't know that I can afford this to, oh, this is actually something I can afford and is actually probably a lot better than renting?
Research, and research. Talking to different people, getting advice from different individuals. Everyone I work with is a homeowner, except me. That was the only one. And again, from New York, you have that renter's mentality. You don't want to be tied down. You may want to move somewhere else. You want to experience life without feeling like you're caught in anything, so to speak. And then when I started looking at things that were within my budget, it was actually cheaper than the rent I was paying in either apartment I lived in. I was like, I can make this happen. I just got to work diligently within my budget, make sure I get something that I can afford and stick to that. A lot of people get the fever and they're like, oh, let's get something bigger. Let's get the biggest house we can get. Let's get the dream house now.
Yeah.
I can wait. It's okay. I'm a single guy, ladies, but I'll make it work. I'll get to that point in my life, but this is definitely the step in the right direction, so to speak. This is something I can build upon, whether I sell it or if I decide to make it a rental property later and move into something else. It's the first step in that process.
Yeah. I think that's huge is having that hard line for what your budget is, because a lot of people search and then you kind of creep up an extra 10,000,
Right.
an extra 10,000, because you see that home that's at the top of your budget, and
Right.
then their payment becomes a lot more than they anticipated. How close were you to, like, did you have an exact number in mind for your budget, or was it kind of a range?
Part of my research, I have followed the Dave Ramseys and the Chris Hogans of the world,
Yeah.
along with looking at your channel as well on some of the things, some of the tools that they use. One of the things I had to really, really be careful with was make sure I stuck within my budget after taxes. I know with loan officers, and we'll touch on this a little bit later. Loan officers give you that 25% gross is what they use, when you should really be looking at your net, because
Right.
taxes come out, you got your 401k, and I'm a divorcee, so I pay child support. So I have to put that all into my budget and figure out what exactly is that I can afford. And based on the numbers, I had a pretty solid number, but I knew if certain things would happen, I could afford a little bit more, or if certain things went against me, I could afford a little bit less. But I had to stick with that number. It wasn't a hard number per se, but at least it was a general number within about at most $100 to $200 either way. But making sure I stuck with it. That was the key about it. And yeah, there are people out there who will convince you that you could afford more, and you got to really, really be
Yeah.
careful with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think what you're really touching on is this idea of having a budget and then overall having a plan that you stick with. Because I think a
Exactly.
lot of people get into the buying world and they kind of feel like they're just getting blown around with the wind, which is really difficult because you have a lot of heavy-handed salespeople who are going to try to
Oh, yeah.
convince you, not always maliciously, but sometimes
Right.
they don't even know what your budget is. And so they're just going off of what you're saying. And so without having that resolute plan of saying, this is my budget, this is how much I'm only willing to spend, it's really easy for that to slowly start creeping up until the point where you can't really back out as much or as easily as you could beforehand. So can you talk us through the timeline of, so you realized, okay, I actually can afford a home. At what point did you start talking to a realtor and a loan officer?
This would probably be March of this year.
Okay.
When I went to see my first townhouse, and like I wasn't really impressed by it, but again, I learned that okay, I can afford this. I will say I did let my first realtor and loan officer go, and we could talk about that if you want. And I switched, but the current townhouse that I purchased, I bought in June. I put the bid in, I'm sorry, in June, and it was a short sale, so that's a 6-month process. If you know anything about short sales, this was a pre-foreclosure that I purchased.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of time that I had to sit and wait, but that time I used to work on my budget, make sure I stuck within those constraints I placed upon myself. I took project management classes back in New York, so it's
Okay,
big
yeah.
for me to stick within those constraints, time, money, value, things like that. So it worked out for me doing it that way. I mean, again, it took a while. And there's some people who were like, oh my God, 30 to 45 days sounds like a long time. It took 6 months. Like it was from June to the end of October.
Yeah.
It was about 5 or 6 months I had to wait. But it was worth it at the end of it because I paid what I wanted to pay. I put the amount of money that I could afford, and I was able to move into this place, and it's mine.
Yeah. And tell me, what happened with the first loan officer and realtor?
So I'm an energy guy. One of the things I do, I teach fitness classes, and when you're in front of people, you got to be high energy no matter what it is, day or night. So I kind of need that energy as well. I need to feed off of that. The first realtor, nice person. We've worked together, Jim, but it's like, I hate to say it like that, but it's like I didn't feel the energy. It's like, all right, I think
Sure.
we'll work with somebody else.
Yeah.
And my realtor that I picked up, I got from Zillow of all places.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we just connected. I mean, we still text each other right now. Like we text each other, we send memes to each other, things like that. So we have a really good friendship on top of it.
Yeah.
As far as the loan officer goes, the first loan officer, I must give credit where credit's due. She was an excellent teacher. She taught me a lot about not just budgeting 101, but also working on with your debt to credit ratios. That was a big thing I had to learn. Not having balances across several credit cards, because that actually hurts you more because it's considered you have less to spend a month on
Right.
what your mortgage would be. So that I had to learn that because I had a couple of credit cards with some balances on it. I had a gas card I was using all the time. Like, it's giving me 3 cents off of gas. That doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. So I had to clean that, and that helped big time. But when it came to the pre-approval letter and what happened after that, I got conflicting messages. Initially, we can do whatever you want. Then later on as well, the only thing we can do for you is get single detached homes. Looks like you're gonna need a little help, but you could afford things $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted. Like it went from we can do whatever you want. That's a big shift in knowledge, and I felt at that point you're trying to make a sale. So it was very cordial. I said, I think I will look to someone else. And the next realtor I got, great guy. I had all the paperwork already done, so it was just a matter of uploading it to their system. We spoke in person a couple of times. Everything was great. He said, look, just stay on budget. You're doing fine. You did everything right. I actually had to take a class before closing, which I was really, really surprised. But I think the only knock on that was I wish they would have done it in the beginning of the process. I think that would have helped a lot of people. People go in there blind, and thank God there are people like you out there that we can watch and learn. But a class like that where you're learning about all the terminology, what you need, what you should have, documents to have in triplicate, which I did, and whatnot, that's really, really helpful. And I think that was something they could have done at the beginning, and maybe a refresher at the end. That would help. But that was my team. And, I ran the ship. They say, you're the captain. We'll do what you tell you, but you tell us what you need. You tell us what you're comfortable with. And there were teachers as well. They taught me along the way, and that helped.
Yeah. So tell me about that idea of like you running the ship. Because I know you mentioned that earlier before we started on this call. Talk us through what does that mean for a buyer and how that actually changes the outcome of what's going on?
I think there's a small mistake that we make as buyers where we're looking at our loan officers or our realtors like, sell me this product almost. When in fact it's like, no, this is what I'm going to buy. This is what I can afford. This is the budget we got. Work with me. And if they're willing to work with you, they will. And like my realtor, I'll be honest, I don't think she made a killing on this deal, but we worked really well together. There was a good chemistry there, and she guided me through the process. She actually learned a little bit as well. I think this was her first pre-foreclosure. So that it was a nice symbiotic working relationship we had. And again, we're still cool to this day. We still talk on a regular, and we've hung out a couple of times. So, but back to what I was saying, you need to tell people what it is that you want, and you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be demanding about it, but tell them what you want. Tell them what you're looking for, and the right people will work with you within those means. There should be almost a mentorish aspect. They should teach you a little bit as well, because that's stuff you're going to go moving forward. Again, in my case, I don't think this is my forever home. I think this is my transition piece. But now with this knowledge, I know where to go moving forward. And I can help other people, hopefully. And hopefully this will help other people with the same process that they're going through. Yeah.
And like you mentioned, having that knowledge in the beginning is so crucial. Because like you mentioned, you said like research, because you can't come into that confidence of knowing exactly what you want until you actually know what you want. And I think that's the loop people get stuck in, is they don't do research up front, and they kind of put all of that onto the realtor or loan officer, which isn't a bad thing. Like they're there to help and teach, but you kind of aren't, using that metaphor, you're not able to direct the ship really, because you don't even know, what are the bounds of my budget and how much I'm willing to spend and what I actually want. So doing that research up front, like you mentioned, I think is so important. Finding your coworkers, people, friends of yours, family of yours who own homes, doing research online, watching YouTube videos and reading articles and all that helps you get to that point where you now are able to say, I know exactly what I want, and now I can assemble the team who has those same goals or can help me achieve those goals.
Right. I agree. I agree 100%. I mean, again, it's not easy because there's a lot of information out there that you got to sort out. There is a lot of information. So you got to make sure you separate the noise and the sales pitches from what it is you're looking for. There are some general things you can learn from everybody, but you really got to make sure you drown out the noise, because there are some people out there who are trying to sell you items. I think we've discussed it before we got on the call. You feel like you're being solicited products and whatnot. You shouldn't have to feel that way. You want to make sure that the people you work with have that best intent, and the people you're learning from, even if it's on YouTube, you want to make sure that they have the best intention for you, whoever you are in that audience.
Yeah, having that narrow focus, because even like, I don't know if this is a national thing. I know around here, when people close on a home, there is a company that will try to mail. They'll say like, if you send us $100, we'll mail you your deed or something like that. And they put it on official looking thing.
I
It's
wish
like,
I had it here to show you. I saw it. I was like, I'll get that eventually. Why do I got to pay you? It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Not only will you get it, but like I can go look up your deed, for instance. It's online. It's all public record.
Right.
And so you have a lot of these companies who are trying to find, how can we kind of, work our way into getting a little bit of extra money. And because people they don't know what to look out for, they can kind of get cut off guard a little bit. And not to say that you want to run around with having this super anxious mind of everybody's trying to get me. But I really think it comes back to that focus that you mentioned is you're doing the research, you have your team around you, now you have the focus. And if you have questions, you have a team of people who you can trust to say, hey, is this something I actually really need to pay for? Is this required?
I got to give credit where credit's due to my team. I mean, they were, every time I text, I'll be honest with you, like I said, it wasn't, there are definitely sales out here that are bigger. But I was a pain in the rear. I would text them, what's this about? What's that about? What's going on? During closing, I'll give a quick example. During closing, I noticed that the PMI in my closing costs went up. It was actually double than what I originally was quoted. So I went right to my loan. I was like, hey, and I'm texting him frantically. Look, I don't want to sign this. I don't want to pay for this. I'll walk away. He goes, relax, calm down. Let me talk to him. Let me see what happened. And it just turned out that there was a mathematical error on their part. So it ended up being the dollar amount that I thought it would be. But still, you got to pay attention to those details too. Like, I was so bad with those. I said, I'm sorry. I know I'm a pain. They're like, nope, you're a good customer. You do your research. You do what you're supposed to do. So keep doing it. We like that.
Yeah, awesome. Can you walk us through what did you anticipate like cost being? Share as much or as little detail as you want, but what did you anticipate spending monthly versus how much did that come out to? And can you also talk through like what did you see as far as down payment, closing costs, and rate?
Okay. As far as rate, that's the easy one. I was blessed with what's going on in the world to get an interest rate on my mortgage at 2.875%. So it was before. It was right before. I know the rates went down again. I saw that video when you played. I was like, but it is what it is. At least
it's all good. 2.875 is still like crazy low.
Yeah, I was really happy with it. I did what I had to do since I didn't have all the cash on hand. I had an IRA. Well, I still have an IRA, and there's a federal law that you can take $10,000 out of that IRA and use it towards the purchase of a home. And I figured, I don't know if I'm going to be able to gather the money in time. Let me use that option. If I don't use it, put it back. No harm, no foul. But if I do, that money's there as a reserve and it's available. So I did that. And with that, there's also all the little things you got to pay. I had to pay an EMD. For those who don't know, that's an earnest money deposit. I had to put $500 down for that, which I had. My inspection. We already spoke about the rate. I think soup to nuts, my down payment was $5,900. With the closing costs, it was closer to about $9,000 minus what I spent on the EMD and on the inspection, which is credited at the end of closing. Right. So that $10,000 was perfect. And I ended up paying, the total for the house is $118,000. It's a 2-bed, 2.5-bath townhouse. So I got plenty of space. I doubled my square footage from my apartment. Nice. So I'm literally running around the house going, I don't know what to do. And trying to figure out.
Yeah, now you have to go spend a bunch of money on furniture to fill it up.
Yeah, I mean, I have 3 bathrooms now, so I didn't realize how much cleaning supplies and stuff I needed with 3. I've had 1 bathroom for so long.
Well, tell me, you don't use all of them. You just cycle around and...
Yeah, that's what I do. I cycle, like, I know when I'm downstairs, I got the downstairs bathroom. When I'm upstairs, I'll shower in the master bed, and then I'll use the one in the middle in between every once in a while. So, make sure the plumbing's working. Make sure to keep that plumbing working.
Right. Keep it up to good shape. Oh, that's awesome. So kind of $9,000 total was down payment, closing cost. And like you mentioned, that earnest money is paid up front, but then it's given as a credit back at the end. Correct. Which is great. It's kind of like almost like a security deposit, I think is a good way to think about it with renting. You put it up front, but you get it back at the end.
Right.
Cool. Fantastic rate. Was that what you were expecting? Like through your research, were you expecting around that kind of closing cost and interest rate and payment?
That's a good question. One of the things I did was I played with some of those calculators online to kind of narrow down what I wanted to pay on a monthly basis. I knew I was going to have some PMI, but with that said, I had to make sure that whatever I purchased was gonna be in the range where, again, I wanted to keep it like where my rent was. I ended up getting a better rate than my rent. My rent prior to moving here was about $755. My monthly mortgage payment right now is $679 and change. I mean,
Yeah.
I saved some money on that. Now, yeah, there's an HOA, but even with the HOA, it's still less than what I was paying in rent, and I'm building equity. I mean, at the
Yeah.
end of it all, based on the appraisal that I got, with what I paid down to it, I have 11% equity already as of today, moving into
Right.
the place. So it's a
That's
good
awesome.
start. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way to go.
Yeah, not to mention you're paying the equity, so like that portion of what you were paying in rent, a portion of that is now going towards principal, which is building that equity,
Correct.
like you mentioned. And right now we're at 7% annual appreciation. So I can't do 118 times 7% in my head, but that's at least probably closer to $8,000 in appreciation that you'll gain in a year just from owning the home compared to
Right.
renting. You don't get any of that. You don't get the equity. You don't get the appreciation.
Right.
You just get the luxury of having a little bit more flexibility than maybe you would on the purchase side.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you get the flexibility. I mean, you can move around and that kind of thing. But eventually, you do want to settle on some roots. You do want to build your net worth. I think that's important for people moving forward. Some people kind of live in the moment. I didn't want to be a check to check kind of person. In New York, I was. I felt like I was a living check to check, and it's kind of the lifestyle in New York, where you
Yeah.
use
Well,
debt
New York's
is
expensive.
But yeah, I mean, I was blessed with where I lived. I mean, my rent was pretty low because I had lived there for so long. But when I moved out, I think they hiked the rent up at least $800, easily $800
Really?
when I moved out. Correct.
Dang. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're probably glad you moved out then.
Oh, they must have been ecstatic. I mean, they loved me because I would take care of the house. When the landlord lived it was a 3-family house and they lived there. But when they
Yeah.
would go away, I'd make sure the house was taken care of. If any repairs needed to be done, I was there. If garbage needed to be taken out, I was that tenant. I was that kind of tenant. But
Yeah.
as soon as I left, I know that rent got jacked up to those levels that it needed to be. But I mean,
Yeah.
from what I heard, it's going down again though in New York with everything going on with the pandemic. There's a lot of empty apartments out there currently.
Yeah. So how did you handle the stress of all this? Because like this was a lot longer of a time frame than people normally are going to expect purchasing a home because you're looking at a pre-foreclosure. Normally people are looking at like a 30-day close. You were at 6
Right.
months. How did you handle the stress of all of that?
That's another good question. With the pandemic going on and work and family being 1,300 miles away, it was pretty stressful. But again, having a good team at your side, and not just the people that were working with me for the purchase, having friends saying, "Hey, you'll be okay. If you need anything, we'll help you move," which saved me on costs. And there was always that advice. Somebody giving me advice. Friends at work who helped me out. There were a couple of things I had to do when I moved in here, and there were individuals that really stepped up. So the money I spent on treating them for lunch or dinner was well worth it in comparison to maybe getting a moving truck or something like that. I have some awesome people out here, and I got to thank them again. I thank them every time I see them. But that was part of it that helped cycle it. Another thing was just doing things like my hobbies. Like I was still teaching my fitness classes at the time, so that was a nice way to relieve some stress. I make sure I take time. I guess you would put a calm moment would be one of those things that you do.
Yeah, there you go.
I go out and I go on walks. I take nice long walks, reflective. Sometimes I play music. Sometimes I play audiobooks. Sometimes I just listen to the wind and just take a breath, recharge, and back at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Instead of just always being stuck in that whirlwind of there's always things changing and you're trying to keep up with everything.
Right.
Was it beneficial for you because you moved from out of state into a completely different state? Like you went from New York City with taxi cabs and traded it for like cows and cornfields. Like, was it helpful to rent there for a while? Because I think a lot of people when they're moving from state to state is their first thought is, well, maybe I'll purchase. But I think the hard part is you don't really know that area. You don't really know where you want to purchase. So did you find it was helpful to have those first couple of years of renting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I lived in both states. I lived both in Kansas and Missouri. So I got to learn what each state offered. I got to learn where to go, the nice places, the not so nice places, places to hang out, places to eat. I have some family out here, so I got to go to where they live and see what on the other side of the fence, so to speak. But it was definitely really, really helpful. You got to learn your environment first, because if I would have just bought a house immediately, and it may have been cheaper back then, what if I didn't like it? What if I wanted to go back? What if things didn't work out? Now you're talking about having a house. Like I said, my first job didn't pan out. What if I would have gotten this house and now we're talking about facing foreclosure or things of that nature? So
Yeah.
renting definitely helped. It gave me the flexibility to look around, learn the region, learn where to look as far as my budget can afford as well. Because there are some very beautiful places that are affordable. There are some places that are very, very expensive given the budget I was working with. I mean, eventually maybe I can move to those areas, but for now, live within your means. And I think
Right.
that's a really important thing that I've been stressing, I'm sure. But live within your means. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Live within your
Yeah.
means and build. It's a step by step process.
Absolutely. Yeah. It really is that stepping stone kind of approach. And I think what you'll find is you'll be in this home for a couple more years and maybe longer. But the amount of equity that you'll have when you go to sell now creates this bigger down payment that you can go put on a bigger home if you want to. Or you can use it to create savings or pay off debt or go on a nice vacation out of Missouri. You know, but you have, just like you mentioned, it really is that stepping stone approach. Which is why I was very careful to I try not to use the language of dream home. Or that's why I
Right.
say win the house you love, not the house that's your dream home. Because otherwise it gets us stuck in this narrative of this has to be the perfect home that I saw on HGTV, and somehow this house is going to make me feel more complete emotionally, which it never
Right.
does.
Right, and
So
and I'm sorry, but I
go
think
ahead.
you're
You're good.
correct. I think it's absolutely correct, because if you're always aiming, trying to grab that brass ring, you might miss out on incredible opportunities. In my case, I know this is a stepping stone to something bigger and better, but I can use this, whether I use the equity, as you stated, go on vacation or anything like that, or if I use it, make this a rental property and have that cash flow
Yeah.
going, I have another income stream. I mean, these are some of the things I've been thinking of. Just building a little empire, if you will. Hopefully there'll be a Mrs. Martinez out there somewhere that say, join me.
Yeah, so we'll have to leave your phone number down here, and we'll see if we can hook you up a little bit.
Hey, there you go. Win the house and the woman you love. That might
Yeah,
be a good fight.
yeah.
You gotta check that out.
This channel is going to start serving two purposes. So just to wrap this up, if for somebody who's maybe they're renting right now, or they're maybe looking at purchasing another home, what's the one big piece of advice or the one main tip that you would give to somebody that if they walked away from this video with just having this one tip, you feel like they would be so much more on track than maybe they were to begin with?
Have a plan. Stick to your plan. Stick to those goals. Be flexible. There may be things that change along the way, but stick to your plan. Make sure you have a good team around you. And the team is not just the people that are helping you with your purchase. Friends, family. Find the right advice. Listen with your mind more than your heart. Sometimes your heart can get you in trouble, and that's in any aspect of life. Make sure that the people around you are good people. Make sure those people are giving you the right advice, not just what you want to hear. Because some people think it's just whatever they want to hear is the good, is the good. No, sometimes you need to take criticism as well. Sometimes you got to take it on the chin and learn from those experiences. And I did. I can tell you during this process, there were some things I had to learn along the way. And this is the 3-year process from New York to here. There were some things that definitely humbled me along the way. And I took it as a learning lesson, and it got me to where I am right now. And I know I can build to bigger and better things moving forward. So stick to your plan, ladies and gentlemen. Get a good team. Kyle will help you out too. Listen to him. He knows what he's talking about, man. He helped me.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I think one thing that you didn't mention in there, just because you're probably too humble to say it, is you have the plan, but you also did all of the work that plan required. Right?
Well, it is, yeah. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. And even in the moving process, I did most of it myself, and my friends were so upset with me. Like 2/3 of my move I did single-handedly in the hatchback. If you could, I wish I recorded it. But, and I'm proud to say I am, and I appreciate that. Thank you. But it is a lot of work. It would have been easier if I had a partner in crime. Sure, it would have. But I can say I did it. I did it my way, as Frank Sinatra said a long time ago. And I'm moving forward. I'm just to bigger and better things.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Erik, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. I really think what you've shared here is just going to be incredibly helpful for people going through the process, because you can do research all day long, but everything can be just cold, and it's hard to see what's the firsthand experience of what people have been going through. And you've been fortunate to have people around you who have given you great advice, and sometimes people don't have that. So I think you're going to be that piece of advice for a lot of people who maybe don't have good knowledge coming in from people around them, because a lot of times family doesn't give the best advice. I'm sure you
I
found.
agree with that. Hey, I hope for anyone who watches, I really hope this is helpful. And Kyle, if we have to do it again, if there's any other time that I can help you, I'd welcome the opportunity to do that. Again, I think having a real world person going through real world experience, regardless of where we are in the country, I think it'll help. And that's all I want to do. I want to help people right now. So
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Erik. I look forward to talking with you soon.
all right, man. Thanks for having me.